Krishna devotees, welcome to Sloka Day. Today's Sloka is Sloka number 47 of chapter 18. Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha
Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunaha
Paradharmat Swanushtitat
Paradharmat Swanushtitat
Swabhavaniyatam Karma
Swabhavaniyatam Karma
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham.
Kurvannapnoti Kilbisham.
Word for word meaning, translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Shreyan,
Shreyan,
better.
better.
Swadharmaha,
Swadharmaha,
one's own occupation.
one's own occupation.
Vigunaha,
Vigunaha,
imperfectly performed.
imperfectly performed.
Paradharmat,
Paradharmat,
than another's occupation.
than another's occupation.
Swanushtitat,
Swanushtitat,
perfectly done.
perfectly done.
Swabhava niyatam,
Swabhava niyatam,
prescribed according to one's nature.
prescribed according to one's nature.
Karma,
Karma,
work.
work.
Kurvan,
Kurvan,
performing.
performing.
Na,
Na,
never.
never.
Apnoti,
Apnoti,
achieves.
achieves.
Kilbisham,
Kilbisham,
simple reactions.
sinful reactions.
Translation: it is better to engage in one's own occupation,
It is better to engage in one's own occupation,
even though one may perform it imperfectly,
even though one may perform it imperfectly,
than to accept another's occupation
than to accept another's occupation
and perform it perfectly.
and perform it perfectly.
Duties prescribed
Duties prescribed
according to one's nature
according to one's nature
are never affected by sinful reactions.
are never affected by sinful reactions.
Prabhupada writes in the purport, one's occupational duty is prescribed in Bhagavad Gita. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahmana, although he may have been born into a Brahmana family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. So Prabhupada writes very beautifully here that everybody's work is important. And everybody's work becomes divine or sublime if it is done in the mood of service to the Supreme Lord. It doesn't matter how exalted supposedly that work is in material consideration or how lowly that work is in material consideration. If it is done with devotion to the Supreme Lord, then all work becomes transcendental. The occupational duty of a Brahmana is certainly in the mode of goodness. But if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahmana. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies. And sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs. But a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmana. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party. But if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you, I am making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making a profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of a Brahmin. So Prabhupada has taken the most perfect example to explain why lying, if you are in a business or if you are a Kshatriya, for the sake of diplomacy or for the sake of profit, one may have to do these things. So you shouldn't think, oh, the scriptures say we should not lie, and therefore run away from what comes naturally to you and go try and become a Brahmana. So Brahmana is not a profession. Correct? Being a Brahmin is not a profession. But if you think it can be pursued as a profession, then you'd be wrong. So Prabhupada says that is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra doesn't matter. If he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then his titles, the designations based on your qualities, your birth, the kind of work that you do, does not matter. Even Brahmanas who perform different types of sacrifice sometimes must kill animals, because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the 3rd chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of Yajna, or for Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. So it's very beautifully written purport. You can read it again and again to get clarity. Why Krishna is saying it is better to do your own duty that comes naturally to you than to give up something artificially and try and do some other Varna's duty. From another parampara. When we do our Swadharma, prescribed occupational duties, there is a twofold advantage. It is in tune with our disposition. Hence, it is as natural to our personality as flying is to a bird and swimming is to a fish. Secondly, since it is comfortable to the mind, it can almost be done involuntarily, and the consciousness becomes free to be engaged in devotion. Which means you get used to a particular type of occupation, it comes as second nature to you. And because certain occupations come as a second nature to you, then it is easier for you to focus your mind on devotion. Instead, if we abandon our duties thinking them to be defective and take up another's duties unsuitable for our nature, we struggle against the innate inclination of our personality. This was exactly Arjuna's situation. His Kshatriya nature was inclined to military and administrative activities. Events drove him to a situation where it was necessary to participate in a war of righteousness. If he were to shirk from his duty and withdraw from the battlefield to practice austerities in the forest, it would not help him spiritually, for even in the forest, he would not be able to get away from his inherent nature. In all likelihood, he would gather the tribal people in the jungle and become their king. Instead, it would be better for him to continue doing his duty born of his nature and worship God by offering the fruits of his works to him. When one becomes spiritually accomplished, the Swadharma changes. So you see how beautifully this moves. This yoga ladder is linear. You can actually change your Swadharma, but to change your Swadharma, your consciousness has to be elevated. And if your consciousness has to be elevated, then you have to be a sadhaka. You have to practice. It no longer remains at the bodily platform. It becomes the dharma of the soul, which is devotion to God. At that stage, one is justified in giving up occupational duties and engaging wholeheartedly in devotion, because that is now the swadharma of one's nature. For people with that eligibility, Shri Krishna will give the final conclusion in the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Give up all varieties of dharmas and simply surrender unto me. However, until that stage is reached, the instruction given in this verse applies. Thus, the Srimad Bhagavatam states, Tavat karmani kurvitana nirvidyeta yavata matkatha shravanadho va shraddha yavan najayate. This is from the 11th canto. We must keep doing our prescribed occupational duties as long as the taste for devotion through hearing, chanting, and meditating on the Leelas of God has not developed. So we'll conclude with this particular commentary by His Grace Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. Why Krishna urges Arjuna to stick to his natural duty. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells Arjuna twice, in the 3rd chapter and in the 18th chapter, that it is far better to act according to one's own nature than according to another's nature. What is the point of this instruction? And why does Krishna repeat it twice? So the same point has already been made in the 3rd chapter. The point of the instruction. Arjuna has the nature of a Kshatriya, and he can't act contrary to that nature for long. Not wanting to fight against his relatives, he may temporarily adopt the Brahmana option of forgiveness and pacifism. Pacifism means not wanting to fight. But sooner or later, some provocation will exhaust his artificially adopted Brahmanical seeming patience. So you can pretend to be patient for a short period of time because it is not convenient for you to take up violence at that particular moment in time. But by your nature, if you are easily provoked, it is said that Kshatriyas are easily provoked. You just have to insult a Kshatriya and that it enrages them, and that is why they are able to fight. Even on the battlefield, it is said, with the opposing parties provoke each other by calling each other names or degrading them. And why do they do that? It is to get their blood boiling so that they're ready for that fight. You see, everything has a purpose. Even anger has a purpose. Insults has a purpose. But sooner or later, some provocation will exhaust his artificially adopted Brahmanical seeming patience, and he will succumb to anger, even resort to violence. But such aggression will propel him to actions outside the boundaries of dharma. Brahmanas are duty-bound to tolerate and forgive, not take martial action themselves. It reminds me, in the Ramayana, when the rishis ask Lord Ram to come and protect them when they're doing their yajnas. It is not that the Brahmanas cannot vanquish the demons themselves because they are very powerful. But it is not their duty to do that. It is not their duty. Their duty is to perform yajnas in this particular instance. And it is a Kshatriya's duty to take care of unsavory elements in society or troublesome elements in society. So hence, even though the rishis are very powerful, they ask the Lord to come and take care of this particular matter. Better that he be true to his nature and channel the warrior within him constructively. The Kurukshetra battlefield offers him a ready-made arena to fight for protecting dharma. The point of repeating the instruction. So 2 things Chaitanya Charan Prabhu is outlining here. First of all, why is the Lord instructing this particular matter thing? And then why is he repeating it now? The repetition suggests that Krishna considers the instruction important enough to restate. Additionally, the context of the 2 verses suggests progress toward a more positive emphasis. In the 3rd chapter, Krishna's tone seems more foreboding. Foreboding means like a warning. Acting according to another's nature can be fearfully dangerous. Better that he stick to his natural duty, even at a very high cost. Sometimes you have to do what you have to do and be willing to pay the price for it. So you may lose family members in the mood to protect dharma in this case. So Arjuna has to do a lot of sacrifices to fight on this battlefield. He's going to lose his family, but he has to do it because it's the right thing to do. In the 18th chapter verse, Krishna's tone seems more promising. Arjuna's natural duty will keep him free from negative karma. This assurance becomes even more heartening in the context of the previous verse exhortation. Work can be done as a form of worship. It is not that work itself is worship. Work can be done as a form of worship, and such work takes one to ultimate perfection. By sticking to his natural duty, Arjuna will be true to his nature, channel his inner warrior constructively, and progress toward perfection. So very beautifully explained the crux of the shloka, because sometimes it's very hard to understand. What does Krishna mean? Do we stick to our lower natures or do we overcome them? So Krishna is saying the lower natures can be overcome through practice, but arbitrarily we cannot give up so-called lower nature. Right? It has to be a natural and methodical progress towards higher levels of consciousness. Therefore, Krishna is saying, whatever comes naturally to you, that is what you should be doing from an occupation standpoint. Yeah. We should not do anything otherwise.
If you like our videos, please subscribe to our channel and turn on the bell notification. If you'd like to join our classes every day, please check the details in the description section of this video. We look forward to serving you.